you guys, welcome back. My name is Carrie Penny. I am the Happy Crafty Homemaker, and today I am going to be answering more questions that you guys have had. However, we are focusing specifically on charts and tools that answer those questions. So this is a little bit of a weird video. Once again, we're falling in that crafty chat. So this will be like our fourth crafty chat in a row because we did, or on Saturdays. So we did tools that are necessary for knitting and crocheting, tools that are not necessary but I love, and then tools that I am not a fan of. So this will be our fourth one in an ongoing barrage of just general crafting information and general crafty things to share. So I'm kind of excited about this. I love finding tools and things for you guys to use that will make your crafting experience quicker, easier, and better for you. So I get asked questions for a lot of fairly standardized information, from understanding yarn weights to understanding like blanket sizing. So I have pulled some charts that I will share here on the screen as I'm talking to you guys. However, in the description box down below, I do have links to all of these people's websites. I did make a note of whose website I pulled things from. So you guys can go and either print out or save to a digital platform your preferred chart, or go find one that you like more than the ones that I share here. There are lots of things out there to help us know this information or have this information at hand. You can purchase downloads, you can purchase cards that contain this information, or wood keychains that contain this information. I just personally am kind of cheap, so downloading it to my phone makes more sense. I have at various times had these printed and laminated, and I keep them in my cart. However, with the move 10 weeks ago, I have somehow misplaced my printed laminated copies of these. I will let you know which ones, I think it is which ones that I kept printed and laminated. Anyway, let's get on with it. So one of the things I frequently get asked about is blanket size. What size is a stroller blanket? What size is a king size blanket? What size is a lapgan? So these are three different charts that I pulled that I think give you a very nice combination of things. If one of these has a lot more sizes on it, two of these are a little bit more geared to us handcrafters, where we are making things by hand. But the first one I wanted to share with you guys is from All Free Crochet. And I'm hoping like I'm putting these up in an order that makes sense. The next one is from Cozy Rosie UK. And the next one is from Sorella. So I think all three of these have the watermark or company name or website name there on the screenshots that I have downloaded to my phone. Frequently the one that I use and just keep on hand is the one from Sorella. That's my first go-to reference for a lot of the hand crocheted, hand knitted blankets that I've made in the past. That's the one I've had on my phone probably for the longest. However, in the past, when I've just needed a reference tool, the one that I pull up off my computer more often is the All Free Crochet one. It does have more sizes of blankets on there, but I mean, these are things that are kind of standardized information out there, but nobody can keep all this in their brains. Let's be honest. There's too much information in the world. There's no way to just keep this in our brains at all times. So remember, you can go check out their websites. I will specifically have links to where I found these charts. But yeah, that's just a good one to have on hand if you tend to make blankets. If you're a quilter, this is also a really good reference to have on hand. I know a lot of people make lap robes to donate and not knowing what size to make. Also, wheelchair blankets versus lapgans tend to be a little bit different too. So there you go. If the charity you're making for does not specify the size, these are wonderful references. Also, if you're knitting for crocheting for a new baby in your life, knowing what the use of the blanket's going to be, just saying. So the next set that I pulled up is yarn size charts. So we have one from Joe to the World Creations that is specifically targeting crocheters. We have the next one is Petals and Picots, and the next one is from DIY Candy. And once again, this is kind of one of those self-explanatory kind of things. One of the things that I get questioned about a lot is understanding. So a few years ago, and I've mentioned this before, a few years ago, now I guess it's been about 15 years, but the Yarn Council decided that we're going to do this 0 through 7 thing. And it started out as 0 through 5, and then we added 6 and 7 as more and more chunky yarns came out on the market. But before, you know, and you'll hear me, I still refer to things as lace weight, fingering weight, DK weight, sport weight, Aran weight, worsted weight, bulky, super bulky, and then jumbo. I am not a fan of the 0 to 7 thing, and it's because, like, especially with 3 and 4, those contain a wide array of expected gauge when you knit and crochet those yarns, and I don't think it's a very precise metric. So if you pulled up a pattern that called for a size 3 yarn, but what they actually used was maybe a light DK, and you have a sport and you think, oh, 3 is a 3 is a 3 is a 3, it may take you forever to figure out why you're not reaching gauge, or why you're way over gauge or way under gauge. And same thing with a size 4 where you've got Aran through heavy worsted, and that's a lot of difference when you're talking about gauge. So if you're making a garment, I think it's very important to actually know the smaller units of identifying your yarn and understanding things like wraps per inch. So if you're unsure of what size your yarn is and it's only marked with this symbol and doesn't specify this is a worsted weight or a light worsted weight or a heavy worsted weight or an Aran weight, understanding wraps per inch. So I just take a ruler and wrap my yarn around it, count the number of wraps in an inch. That's it. And that will tell you how large your yarn is. You don't want to put a whole lot of tension on it. You don't want to put any more tension on your yarn and stretch it any more than you would be stretching it with the tension on your hook or needle. So it gives you a far more accurate gauge of what to expect. Now, if you're just making dishcloths, like, gauge really isn't all that important. But when you get into even shawls to a certain degree, gauge can be very important to understand, because you don't want to end up with an 8-foot shawl because you chose the wrong yarn, or you didn't understand, you know, the proportions in gauging. So I know doing gauge swatches is one of those things that tends to be a little bit on the controversial side. I think it's only truly critical when you're doing garments, but there are times where you do want to understand what to expect in the size, or how far your yarn is going to go in a project before you have to, like, change colors, change balls, or whatever. So this is information I think is very important. I have lots of very finite feelings on how yarn is being marketed and how yarn is being the metric we're using for weighing and measuring yarn. I have a lot of issues with it. I've made no bones about that since the first time I discussed it here on the channel. I had issues with it when they first started moving to this 0 to 7 thing. I just don't find it to be very accurate. And to me, while accuracy is not always important, when it is important, it's crucial and critical. So I have pretty strong feelings on this subject, but hopefully this will help you guys to understand. Seeing these will help you to bear in mind, see, and visualize what it is that we're actually looking at when we're talking about the size and weight of yarn. Also, I really liked the one from Joy to the World Creations, as it's much more dynamic in the information she offers in the chart. You know, from hook size and expected gauge and stuff. I think that's the one that had the expected gauge. I really liked that information added in there. I thought that was a really, really nice touch. So Another question that I get a lot is, how do you know how much to purchase if you're purchasing for a specific project? And these two charts are really, really, really great to have. I used to have a mini version of these that I kept in my wallet when I carried a large wallet all the time. It's long since deteriorated and fallen apart, but specifically the one I used to use was the Lion brand chart for this. As soon as they released this, I thought this was absolutely brilliant. And then when I was researching other charts of this nature, I did find the all free knitting chart. So for each size yarn, obviously, if you want to make a hat, you're going to need a different number of balls. Most of these are assuming 100-gram balls. So keep that in mind when it says you need one ball. They're saying one 100-gram ball will get you to the project. Or for in the case of a sweater, if it says 5 balls, you might need 500 grams of yarn. So this is just one of those, if you purchase like I do, where you don't have the perfect project in mind, but you know that yarn needs to be a sweater, or you know that yarn needs to be a hat and scarf, or you're planning on making a shawl with that. This is when you would use this chart. This is when I use this chart. Also, if you are wanting to make a sweater and wondering if you have enough yarn in your stash to make a sweater, like I could be looking at this green here and asking, do I have enough to make a sweater out of this? I don't want to start a sweater and then run out. So do I have enough of this to make a sweater? Using this chart is also really, really nice because it tells you an estimated yardage to purchase based on an average of blankets, of hats and scarves, of shawls. It's not going to be exact. It's not going to be perfect. You might buy too much or a little bit too little, but you at least have a ballpark idea of how much you're going to need. So if you run into the store and you find that perfect clearance on that yarn and you're like, ooh, that needs to be a sweater, but how much do I need? You don't want to buy all 20 balls when you only need 7 balls. So like I said, this used to live in my wallet just because that's, and I've mentioned this before in how I stash yarn. That was one of like the second crafty chat video that I did. I did why stash shaming is a problem for crafters, and then how to stash mindfully. I do now, this has not always been the case, but for the last 8 years, when I purchase, when I'm stashing up on stuff, I do purchase with projects in mind. So like when I bought these on clearance, these are Knit Picks Brava Speckles. I bought these on the annual sale last year. I knew I was probably going to do maybe a hat and cowl. So I bought 2 balls of each color. And that gives me a short cowl and a hat, or an ear warmer and a longer cowl. So I knew what to buy because of charts like this that have been very useful. Also, when I purchased the Lion brand Woolies hand-dyed collections when they were on clearance many moons ago, I knew how many balls to buy or how many hanks to buy so I could make a sweater, because I knew like that lavender color that I am knitting a sweater out of, I knew I wanted that to be a sweater for myself. So I was able to look at a chart like this to know how much I needed to buy. Hopefully I didn't talk too much about that. Okay, so these two are actually just good to have wherever you work on projects. If you are project monogamous, I would keep this wherever you keep your projects. If you are not project monogamous, but you tend to work at your sofa, I would slip this on a clipboard and tuck it like in a basket beside the sofa. But these are knit and crochet abbreviation charts. There are 80 bajillion of these out on the market. Like if you just search for abbreviation charts, there are 80 bajillion of these. I could not find the one I used to have printed, and that was from Interweave Press. I had the crochet one and the knit one from Interweave. That did not pop up on my search today, but today we do have one from treasury.com for knitting abbreviations and one from All Free Crochet for crochet abbreviations. So even those of us who have been at it for a while, sometimes we come across something we're not familiar with and the designer has failed to mention is the abbreviation for something. Now, these are the standardized abbreviations that have been used for many years for these stitches. I do have to say, I am noticing a very disconcerting trend recently of indie designers making up their own abbreviations and not notating the abbreviations in a pattern. There is standardized abbreviations, just like there are standardized, and maybe I can throw an image of those up here too, and I didn't pull these off my phone, but there are standardized chart markings for crochet stitches and knit stitches. So if you are designing a chart for crochet or for knitting, there is actually a standardized format to use for these things. And I have, one of the reasons why I don't do a whole lot of test knitting for designers I don't know personally is because I have gotten into it with designers before at not using standard pattern writing. And I'm sure standard pattern writing could be confusing for some people. I'm not saying it can't be. But it's far more confusing when each designer just kind of comes out and decides what they're going to do and what they're going to say, what they're going to call something. It's one thing if we just kind of culturally have a shift to calling a treble stitch a triple stitch. I can understand that and I can accept that. That's not a problem if we're just shifting the language a little bit. But when a designer does not use the standard abbreviations and expects somehow for the person creating the project to intuitively know what they're talking about when they're not following a standard abbreviation or standard format for patterns, it is very, very confusing, especially when you pay good money to purchase a pattern and they're not using standard abbreviations or standard formatting. So once again, this is something I have strong feelings on. This is something that really, really grinds my gears and really, really frustrates me. If you're just throwing up a free pattern, I understand. I get it. You just kind of roll with the punches on it. But if you are charging people more than $1 for your pattern, you really ought to be using the standard formulation, standard language for this so it can be understood and the information can be extrapolated and recreated without frustration. So anyway, I think, especially if you are, I transitioned from crocheting to knitting and had to learn a whole new language when I started knitting. I understood standard format writing for crochet. I had been crocheting for, I started knitting when I was 22-ish, 22, 23 is when it finally clicked for me, I think. And I would have been 23, I think, is when knitting finally clicked. It was because of Nitty Gritty and watching different hands. So anyway, I had been crocheting at that point for 16 years, 17 years. And now at this point, I've been knitting almost 20 years. So when I first made that transition, I had to learn the language of knitting. I did not understand what yoga tutog was. And I will never forget, Lily Chen was on Nitty Gritty talking about learning the language. And she kept going on in this pattern about yoga tutog, and I was like, what on earth is she talking about? Yarn over knit two together. I know what it is now, but I had to figure it out. So having the abbreviation charts, especially if you're switching back and forth between crafts and your brain doesn't quite pick up on the very quickly, it's very handy to just have this on hand. If I can find a direct link to the Interweave Press version of these, I will also leave that in the description box down below. I did not have that one saved to my phone. At least one, if not all of these for each group are actually saved to my phone. The image is saved to my phone because I use them personally These are things I use, tools I use even after 35 years of crocheting and knitting, making yarn things. I still use these. I still need these. Anyway, the last thing I wanted to share with you guys, I had not seen this before. I did download it and I did take a quick look at it, and I would definitely recommend this. Is only for the crocheters out there. However, Maria's Blue Crayon, if you sign up for her mailing list, and she's a pattern designer, so you get some free patterns and notification of things going on and new blog posts, she has a fantastic download available. So if you want to download her pages that she has compiled, I will leave a link for that down below for her, the introduction to her blog for you guys, because I did take a quick look at this. It does have a watered down version of all these individual charts for crocheters. However, having that is your general reference tool, and if you need more, you can look for it, is great, because that's going to cover probably about 85 to 90% of the information you're trying to quick reference. So I would definitely take a look at that. I did not find a knitting version of this that was free with a newsletter or free to download, or even just offered in a series of images that you could save to your phone. So I wish I could have found it. If you find one, leave it in the comments down below. Let me know if you have a version of any of these charts or any references I missed that you would like to share, that you find useful. Please leave a comment down below. I know I drill this home all the time in my videos when I'm reviewing things or talking about certain things, but you guys, y'all are wonderful at reading the comments, replying to each other's comments, answering questions before I can even get to them. And if you've got a tool or a reference that you would like added to this, I would be happy to do another video, but also share it down below, so as people are reading through those comments, they can also have immediate access to that information as well. So I hope you guys are having a wonderful, fantastic weekend. I hope you are making holly jolly and feeling festive. And if you're in the States, you're still running over, trying to get the last of the turkey out of your refrigerator. It's only Tuesday for me as of filming this, and I'm actually down to there's one more turkey dish left, and I'm doing turkey enchiladas. So, anywho, I love you guys. I hope you're having a wonderful, fantastic weekend. I am just running off at the mouth at this point, so I'm going to go on so you guys can get back to the rest of your day. Go check out somebody else's content and see what they're doing. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon. I really need to put this on a magnet and stick it to my tripod so I don't lose it, because I keep misplacing it. And all I have on my desk are my notes and my water. Bye, you guys.